this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
You know how it's never really about where you're going, it's about who you're going with? The right people can turn any drive into a great memory. That's something Toyota really believes. They design vehicles around real life and real people, the ones who make plans happen and bring everyone together. Inside, everything's built with passengers in mind. Comfortable seating, smart layouts, and space that actually works so everyone can relax and enjoy the ride. There's room for the people, room for the stuff, and room for the moments that happen along the way. Because when people are the destination, your ride is important. Learn more at Toyota.com and find the vehicle that fits your people.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
You're about to listen to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, which originally aired on YouTube. If you'd like to catch the show live this offseason, you can head to the Late Round Fantasy Football YouTube channel, youtube.com/@LateRoundFF. We'll be live each Wednesday at noon Eastern. Without further ado, here's this week's episode.
Welcome in. It's the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. I mean, I am just stoked to be here right now, JJ. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a stressful week and a half. Did some traveling, went to the motherland of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this past week. It was great. See the family, see the kids. We had so many people that we wanted to see. And we had a couple parties to go to. One of my best friend from childhood turned 40, got to go to his birthday party. And then we had a retirement party for my father-in-law. And I got to see some my old Halo clan back in the day from my neighborhood. So yeah, like I got to see a lot of people I haven't seen in a while, and it was a great time. And then, you know, you go for you're away for 4 or 5 days and you come home and you're like, oh, that's right. There's a bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah. That's putting it lightly. And as far as like a bunch of stuff going on, because, JJ, we've got some big news, and I don't know how you want to roll this out, because we have been running around with our hair on fire. We've teased it a little bit, but, I'll let you go ahead and reveal what the big news is.
So the big news, folks, is that there is a brand new lateround.com, and it is currently live. We've been working on this for the last 5 or 6 months or so. This has been something that when Kitchen first joined Late Round Fantasy Football, he certainly was pushing for doing something like this. Before Kitchen got here, it was just me running this business, and I wanted to stay as lean as possible, and I wanted to not have to manage as much stuff, just because obviously it's just me and I want to focus on the content. And so what we just realized is that we want to, do more. We're at a stage, with Late Round Fantasy Football where there was just more that we needed and wanted to give to our members aside from what was going on Patreon. And it just slowly evolved into, needing to do this and needing to build this website. So first off, shout out to Kitchen for, project managing this and working on this with our agency, which I want to shout them out as well. Edelmade, they're out of Cincinnati. I worked with one of the owners back in my previous life, I've told this story before that him and I in our last jobs before I started doing this fantasy football thing full time, we would literally, work together. I was a project manager. He was a designer. And we would sit there and daydream, me wanting to be a fantasy football analyst and own my own thing and run my own thing and do this full time, and him wanting to own an agency. And it's really cool to not only have them represent us the way that they have over the last 4+ years, but have him and his wife, who own this agency now out of Cincy, build this amazing website and us do it together. It was just a very full circle moment. He's the one who's designed all of the draft guides and prospect guides for us throughout the years. Unbelievable. I mean, great designer, and his wife is amazing as well, but they're both just unbelievably great people too. And that's what made it easy to obviously, go with them to build this website. So, there might be some bugs that you guys run into as you sort of go through all of this. We do know that there's a Patreon that we've been running for the last 4 years. And our goal is to get everybody off of Patreon and onto this platform. And there's definitely incentive and reason to do that. If you are on Patreon right now, and if you are a member, hold tight. We're going to send you an email. You'll get some communication and on how to do all of that. We're not going to, screw anyone over. Like if you paid a yearly subscription and now you got to pay a yearly subscription, it's not going to be like that. We're going to help you out. And the members hub that Kitchen's showing right here is really going to be able to give folks more than what we've ever been able to offer on Patreon. We have rankings and tiers still. We still have data dumps. We still have the live streams. We have the Discord community, etc. But the rankings and tiers, for instance, we now have a lot more scoring iterations that Brandon Gadula worked on to sort of algorithmically convert rankings into tight end premium, into the different iterations that people always, full PPR, standard, etc. And then there's also the data dump that I'm really excited for. The data dump isn't ready quite yet, just because it's the off season and we're not, that's more of an in season thing. But my goal really and my vision with late round fantasy football, if I were to just be transparent about it, you have a lot of fantasy businesses out there that look at the landscape of being, and they sit there as a data provider. You have the sites out there that are providing the raw data for you to sift through and to look at. And then you have a lot of businesses that are tools businesses where they say, hey, you want a draft, assistant while you're going through your season long draft? Well, here you go. We got a draft assistant for you. And where I see late round is very much in the middle of that, where we're not going to be providing those like crazy, weird, crazy like tools that, are just going to draft for you, because that's just not the way that I am as an analyst, as you guys know. But then at the same time, we're not just going to throw a bunch of data at you and say, hey, go explore, go do your thing here, because I know that not all of you have the time to do that. And so what my plan is, and what we're going to be rolling out over the next couple of months as season really starts to begin, is a lot of really cool and new proprietary metrics that I haven't seen in the fantasy space before, that have been in my brain for the last handful of years. I just haven't had time to sit down and really create them. And now that Brandon is part of this team, him and I have gone through a lot of work, and especially, he's doing a lot of grunt work with it, similar to how he handled the tight end prospect model, the ZAP model. But we're building a lot of these different models to give you guys some additional insights from a data perspective on what to do with your fantasy teams, what to do in your draft. And that's going to be rolling out over the next, couple weeks, couple months, etc. So overall, I'm incredibly excited for it. Oh, the last thing I should say, Kitchen's on the page right now. We now finally have an all access tier, we're calling it, where, we've had Explorer and Insider, and oh my gosh, I've gotten so many emails from people who are just like, I want all of it. I want a prospect guide, a draft guide, and the membership. And so we give you guys a discount by doing that, where you can be an insider for $108 a year, $15 a month. We used to be $10 a month. We bumped that up a couple years ago. People who are already paying $10 a month, you can still pay $10 a month if you were grandfathered in. But $129 a year, you get everything. You get all this data stuff that I'm talking about. You get the rankings, you get the tiers, and then you get the prospect and draft guide, all within this hub, this membership hub. So long story short, I'm incredibly grateful that, we've been able to do this, and genuinely we would not be able to do this without all of you supporting Late Round through the years. It's crazy that it's already been like 4.5 years that this company has been in existence. But I mean, it's just something that I never really dreamed possible. I didn't set out with Late Round to build the community that has been built. You know, like our Discord channel is amazing. It's incredible. Like the server's incredible. The people in there are amazing. And I said this to Kitchen when he joined, you know, from a customer service standpoint, you know, we have the best customers on earth. You guys are so understanding. You're so forgiving. You understand when, you know, things go awry with the process and I miss things, and, you know, you celebrate the wins with me as well. And I just greatly, greatly appreciate all of that. And I hope that, you know, only the best is yet to come. And I really do think the best is yet to come.
For sure. And I'll just echo that as far as this past, 16 months now, 17 months have been just amazing here at Late Round, and super stoked that we have this website. Shout out to Mike and Lauren at Edelmade. And again, you'll be getting, we already have some questions in the chat. You'll be getting stuff from us on Patreon, on Discord, and through your emails. And so if you don't have an email by tomorrow, just email me, david@lateround.com, and we'll get you. So, because if you've already purchased an annual plan, you'll receive a credit for the annual plan on the new site. And JJ, not to be outdone, but we also have the draft guide available to pre-order.
That's right.
Yeah. Right now you can order the draft guide, pre-order the draft guide if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah. The draft guide, you know, as you guys know, the guide itself every year, it takes a lot of work. Like in June, I'm probably going to have to do a couple of rewind episodes and such, you know, like I did this past week for the podcast, just to be able to get some time to be able to do the research for the draft guide. You know, as you guys know, I try to up, you know, and make it better every single year, and make it, you know, be more on that game theory side, and not just have it just be a bunch of player profiles and such, which some of you guys might be into that. That's fine. But, you know, I think that what's important to me and what's important that I share is more of the game theory side and the way to think and to teach how to fish, as opposed to just giving that to you. And so this year, there's a lot of changes happening to that guide that I'm very, very excited about. I've been working on it, you know, since the NFL draft ended. And that should go out. You know, we don't have a launch date yet set. It's usually July 1st, though. I mean, technically. So, you know, just be prepared for that to happen in early July, and then you get the weekly updates like you've always gotten with the, you know, the stuff from for players to target, avoid, etc. But there's even going to be iterations and changes to how we do the players to target, the players to avoid. There's you know, a new metric that we're going to be rolling out that I talked or kind of teased earlier. But check out the draft guide and check out the new lateround.com.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I just cannot get over what we had. We had another comment that said, awesome, it's not designed by Claude. And people know I enjoy AI, but I think this, where Mike, especially like his skill set and the creativity that we have in this site, you can tell it's not AI. And so super, super excited about that. And I know we've spent a lot of time on that, but this is big news. I mean, arguably the biggest like update for a late round product that we've had.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's the biggest thing that we've done for sure. And, you know, it's a slow time of year anyway. There's not that many news items that we got to get to.
I don't know. This past week,
as
soon as we got done with last week's show, we had some, news break. And so let's just, let's get into it.
Today's fantasy news.
All right. Let's start with yesterday's news. Josh Jacobs. And the headline is Josh Jacobs, ... bruh.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is, like, he had that crazy story, you know, growing up, where, you know, he seemed very humbled by his experience growing up, very poor and homeless at times. I remember, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't want to speculate on what happened, because what happened is, you know, what the report is saying is horrific. I will, you know, unfortunately, I got to put the fantasy football analyst hat on in these situations. And unfortunately, these situations happen more frequently than they should. But if you want the fantasy angle of the horrific thing that went on, he could, first off, Drew Davenport on Twitter is someone that you guys should follow because he's always breaking down the legality side in the legal side of these situations. From what I can understand, he could go on the commissioner's exempt list, and that would be the worst case from a fantasy perspective. It'd be a fine case, just given what went down, right? Or what supposedly went down. And so he could go on the exempt list, which means, nothing happens for him in terms of playing until something officially goes is ruled with this case. Or, the way that the NFL typically handles things is, oh, this thing happened over here. We're going to wait and see and let court play its role and do its thing. And then after that, we will, suspend or have that punishment laid out for that player. The weird thing with Josh Jacobs is that, by the time that happens, he could be over the hill from the standpoint of how relevant he is as a player. He was a younger prospect at least. So, he still has a little bit more from an age perspective left, but regardless, it's just a really horrible situation. And if you look at the Packers depth chart, we know that they lost Emmanuel Wilson. Chris Brooks is their backup or direct backup. Marshawn Lloyd, who hasn't been able to stay healthy. Pierre Strong, who, I liked as a prospect as a random day 3 dart, but he's bounced around the league. Damian Martinez was a favorite from many, coming out a couple of years ago, but he's pretty one-dimensional. That was my biggest red flag with him, is that he just was not a pass catching back. And so I look at what they have and I'm like, they're going to have to make a move. Even if they're they don't know what's going to happen here. I would assume some move is going to happen. There are backfields out there where they could, Arizona's one that obviously makes a lot of sense, where they could, trade for a James Conner, or maybe wait for a trade, or, get Trey Benson even cheaper than that, or, go that route. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. It's horrible though. I genuinely hate that this stuff happens in the league.
Yeah.
The Rashee Rice stuff is one thing, and we'll get to that in a second. The Josh Jacobs stuff, the allegations here are incredibly serious and incredibly disturbing. And it's really sad and gross and all of the above that this happens frequently with within these sports. And sometimes, I have no idea how guilty or not guilty we don't know. I don't know the details, but I'm saying that the allegations themselves are incredibly, incredibly horrific. And so, I don't, it just sucks having to, be a fantasy analyst in these cases and have to talk about the fantasy impact when I know, guys, I'm fully aware that there are some really serious allegations here, and those allegations are far more important than anything fantasy football related.
For sure. Yeah. And as far as the Green Bay situation, they could, now I think in the chat, people were talking about potential trades that they might have to do. If
Arizona, like I said, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see, what happens with Josh Jacobs, but on episode we're saying to avoid, if you're drafting some best ball teams, probably should avoid.
Yeah, I'm just, you can make an argument if he falls to the right spot, whatever, but I can't be, if I'm advising you to draft a team, especially for instance, I'm in the MFL 10 of Death, which has been a best ball league that we've been doing for almost over a decade now. Pat Thorman puts it together. And, I think this might be year 13. But anyway, so we do this MFL 10 of Death, and it's an MFL, because MFL 10 started best ball, and, it's an MFL, platformed, draft that we do. And, in that draft, I drew the 102. So I got Bijan Robinson. I'm drafting next to Adam Levitan. I got Bijan Robinson. I got Kenneth Walker at the end of the second round, which I was pretty happy with, even though I'm not overly high on Walker. And then the third round hits, and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, Rashee Rice, what's going on there? Josh Jacobs, what's going on there? AJ Brown, we don't know exactly what that. So I ended up just
Malik Neighbors.
Right. Right. Exactly. Malik Neighbors actually went because, we have Ryan Forbes, who used to be in the fantasy industry. And
a little Rifo.
Yeah, a little Rifo action. He took Neighbors pretty early, But regardless, you know what I ended up doing? I'm like, you know what? This is a singular draft. You know, like this isn't a portfolio draft for me where I'm just trying to extract ADP. I took Devontae Smith at the beginning of the third round because there are too many question marks. And the way that I kind of view it was that Devontae Smith is going to at least give us what he's been giving us, like, which he would be a 4th round pick. And I don't think the opportunity cost is so significant at this point because of all the what's up in the air and the question marks going on with a lot of those like early 3rd round players. So started that draft, Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker, and Devontae Smith.
Very nice. Yeah. I'm drafting a ton of Devontae Smith.
Oh, I have so much Devontae Smith. I mean, look, I've always thought he was a good, I mean, I feel like I said this before, but I feel like he's been a player to target in like every single draft guide that I've done with the late round draft guide.
All right. This one was interesting. Bucky Irving will be back sometime this summer, ... or fall. What a quote. What a quote from yesterday's press conference.
It's hard to like not, it's hard to ignore it, but then it's hard to take it at face value because it was such like it's May, it's kind of a throwaway type quote situation. But I think that there are plenty, and I'm going to be talking about Bucky Irving, spoiler alert, later on the show. And it has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do, I mean, that's like a side item, sure. But, I mean, it's certainly not good news that there was a quote from his coach saying that he could be back in the fall. Like the fall, guys, that's when the season,
that's when we're playing games.
And the crazy thing is that like we went through this last year with Bucky with the exact same player. And I know I've mentioned this before, you know, it's mental health driven. There was stuff going on there. I don't know what's going on here. Like we have no idea. And I think that it just makes this situation a lot more volatile. I haven't seen his ADP fall super dramatically yet. I think that it will. I've only done, I think, one live draft since, the news broke. But I will say this. I've been drafting a lot of Kenneth Gainwell and Sean Tucker regardless of, you know, Sean Tucker's a last round pick. Like, you know, 19th round pick on DraftKings. And
yeah, but he's going to start climbing, I think.
I mean, I am not, this is not hyperbole, Kitchen. I think I have 40% Sean Tucker right now. Like, just, I've been, he's just sitting there as like a player who I think will get some run no matter what, like something, right? And the backs that you get in the 19th round and such just aren't really.
I was about to say, especially if you're like wanting to get that 3, 6, 8, 3, where you have to get 6 running backs and you're at like 4 or 5, he's just I don't want to say he's a lock, but he's the best. Him and another guy, Malik Davis, who I get it. He's not great. Yeah. But, and now you're probably going to have some
I think didn't I talk about Tucker as a player to target last week?
Yeah,
I can't remember if it was but like with Tucker, he not only has proven to be like a pretty good running back, but on top of that, he has multiple outs and he's behind on the depth chart 2 running backs that, you know, Bucky Irving is smaller and they started to take some of his work away, towards the end of last year. And then I know they have a new offensive coordinator and such. And then Kenneth Gainwell is not an early down bruiser. Like Sean Tucker is more of the traditional bruiser on that team. So like he has some role. It's just been kind of interesting to me that he's been like a 19th round pick all spring.
Okay. Rashee Rice, ... bruh. Another situation. He's in jail for 30 days after he had surgery though. I mean, that's like the big issue, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like
surgery and then go directly to jail.
The big issue is not what he did, because it sounds like he was like smoking pot or something, right? And like that alone, someone smoking weed, I don't care at all. In fact, go for it. But what is the problem here is him knowing the ramifications of doing that and still doing that and then getting caught doing that, etc. Like that's a big deal from just a process standpoint of how his mind is thinking about this stuff and how he's seemingly not taking it as seriously as he should. And so now he's, serving time and having to do the 30 days. I don't know what's going to come of this at all. I don't think anyone does. Like you said, the rehab process, having to go down in jail is scary. But if you want to have another last round dart throw that I've been going after, Tyquan Thornton for Kansas City, where he had a role last year. they don't really do that. I mean, I know that they got like a couple guys day 3. Well, Jeff Caldwell was a UDFA, but regardless, they don't really invest in the wide receiver position. Xavier Worthy, is a fine pick. I'm not saying he's not, but like Tyquan Thornton had a role on that team last year. And so if Rashee Rice is out at all, obviously Travis Kelce gets a boost, etc. But I think Tyquan Thornton should be going higher just based on this news. Not to say that he's the same type of wide receiver, because he's not at all. And I also think that if anything further develops with this Rashee Rice stuff, you might see like a Stephon Diggs be headed to like Diggs could play in Kansas City. He'd actually be awesome in Kansas City.
All right. This one was a fun one because we've had just some blah ones. I'm an optimistic guy. This is a quote from Clint. I'm sorry, from Clint Kubiak. Brock Bowers is a football robot from heaven.
If he's a football robot for heaven, they couldn't have given him a better hairline. Like, come on now.
I don't think robots care about their hair. Just like,
yeah, that's true. I mean, look, I've said it before. I think Bowers is tight end 1 this year. There's a lot to like. The problem with Bowers and the problem with Trey McBride and then the problem with Colson Loveland is that I do think that there is a pretty significant opportunity cost if Bowers rises more. I think where Bowers goes right now in best ball is fine. But if he rises more, then you're starting to inch into that like really good running back tier, right? And then with McBride, I just have problems with him. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then with Loveland, you're in that really good wide receiver tier, right? And I like Bowers and Loveland a lot from the standpoint of like, if you're in a 10-team league this year, you should be looking at one of those 2 tight ends, because that's when your team needs to be better. It's a shallower league, all of that. It makes a lot more sense to go after the onesie positions early. And I would much rather be going after those 2 tight ends as opposed to like a Josh Allen or something like that in that kind of scenario at cost, right? But in these best ball environments, like I'm a little bit overweight on maybe like Loveland and maybe a little bit overweight on Bowers, but I'm probably not going to be like 15%. I was like 19% last year with McBride, but I don't think I'm going to get, just because there's some really great wide receivers around Loveland. There's some really good running backs around Bowers. So I'm hoping their ADP stays as is and where it's at, just because of that opportunity cost equation.
Okay. We got some Brissett smoke in Arizona. Apparently the 2 sides are still pretty far ways apart.
I don't know, man. I said this last week.
I know you got some flack for it.
Yeah, on Discord, some folks, Martin, were giving me some crap for my take of like what leverage does Jacoby Brissett really have here? Could he go somewhere else and be a backup and make more money? Sure, if that's really what like he wants to do, but there aren't going to be any other places where he's going to be an obvious starter. And from Arizona's perspective, I said this all, like, I think they're going to give Carson Beck a chance at some point, and they have Gardner Minshew, who is at least usable as like a, week 1, early season guy as a veteran. I think that we all want it from a fantasy perspective to happen, but I just, and look, I'm not saying that Arizona, as like the players on their team, are sitting there being like, oh, we're going to tank and I'm going to play worse, because that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply saying that Arizona knows, the front office, the coaching staff know that they're in a place right now that is a rebuilding place. They do not have a roster that is Super Bowl worthy. Okay. You can clip this all you want. If Arizona wins the Super Bowl this year, I'll buy everyone in chat right now a new house. Okay. It's just, and that's not legally binded by anything. But like, I just, it's just not going to happen. And so Arizona being in the state that they're in, I just don't think that they're in a hurry to say, oh, we absolutely need Jacoby Brissett, who was good last year. Sure. But like I still don't think he was like excellent. Like he's not, we have a pretty large sample of what Jacoby Brissett is. So, and not only that, it's a new coaching staff. It's a brand new staff that's going to be coaching him. So I just don't understand what his true leverage is. Of course he can get more money, and he should get more money. And I'm hoping he gets more money. I'm always on the player side in these situations. I'm just thinking about it more from a business end and what the Cardinals would ideally be wanting to do.
All right, let's move on to some Parker Washington.
Comments are out of control. We got looking forward to the late round mansions. Fire up Zillow, boys.
Yeah, you probably need to put a cap on that.
Yeah, look, that was not legally, like, there's nothing I signed, folks. Okay, it was just all verbal.
I mean, the crazier things have happened in Vegas. I'm not even a hockey guy, but apparently Vegas making the Stanley Cup Finals was crazy.
They fired their coach halfway through the season, or back in March, and they got torched. I mean, like that was the Golden Knights right now remind me when like the Penguins did the same thing when they won the Stanley Cup, and then they went back to back. Who'd they beat the second time when they went back to back?
I can't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? They actually did
the
it.
Nashville Predators.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Back to Parker Washington, though. So reports are he's going to sign a fairly decent contract with the Jags. And also, we have a little quote from his offensive coordinator, Grant Udinski, who says that Parker Washington is capable of what he did at the end of the season last year, and even more than that. I keep on seeing these glowing quotes for Parker Washington, and we have so many players vying for targets in Jacksonville. I mean,
well, you should not be fading any wide receiver in Jacksonville, in my opinion. Like, everyone wants this like really strong opinion on these guys, and everyone wants you to, stake your claim with BTJ or Parker Washington or Jacoby Myers. My answer, if you want to do that, is to just draft Trevor Lawrence is one way of just capturing that. But I don't want to fade any of them because I can make the upside case for each one of them pretty easily. Even Travis Hunter, I think, is a good best ball pick right now. So with Parker Washington, the other weird, like, he's one of those players. Every once in a while, there are these players that I wish I was more vocal about as prospects, right? Where they came out, there wasn't that much hype. The Zap model might have liked them a little bit more than where they were drafted. Parker Washington was kind of that guy. And I just wish that I leaned into that a little. Like, he was an early declare. Like, he had not a horrific profile coming out. And so I he's just one of those players where it's like, he got his opportunity last year. This is the difference between him and Michael Wilson. I talk about this on the episode that I did last week on the insights from building projections. Parker Washington and Michael Wilson will get lumped together this year pretty frequently, I would assume, by some fantasy analysts, because they both kind of came from nowhere last year and they were really good down the stretch, and, they helped people win leagues, all that kind of stuff. The difference is that Parker Washington didn't need an injury for some of that. Well, he technically did from Travis Hunter's perspective to like step in and get work and such, but his peripherals were just really, really, really good. It's like he just needed more routes to be able to show that off. Whereas it really wasn't the case for Michael Wilson. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. So I think Parker Washington is a good player, and I'm not that surprised that they're saying what they're saying. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, the Jags went into the draft and they drafted a bunch of tight ends and they're trying to go heavier, which means fewer wide receivers in the field. But then I look at the personnel in that team and I'm like, why? Like, you have 4 good wide receivers, at least 3 that are going to be playing wide receiver full time. And you have a really good 11 personnel set. You can see how all of them would move around the formation. I don't understand why they would need to go heavy. And so I think that eventually logic will win out because Liam Cohen's a good head coach and smart. And so we're going to see a similar offense as what we saw down the stretch last year eventually. How long that takes, I'm not sure. But that's the reason why I don't want to fade a Parker Washington and why I'm still, going to draft him. And while he's probably going to continue to like move up, not down in the rankings as the summer goes on, right? I think he's a good player. I'm not surprised by some of this stuff. So you can draft him. I'm not ready to say that he's like the new Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is what some people have thrown out there, because Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't have this kind of competition in his offense to be able to be the fantasy asset that he is. But is Parker Washington a good wide receiver who can play on the inside and move on to the outside and do what an ARSB does? To a degree, yeah. I think that he is a good player.
All right. This is a classic quote from Liam Cohen when asked if C-Rod was okay because he's been missing from the OTAs. He says, yeah, injury report will come out at some point, which stokes some comments in the Discord chat again.
I'm sure. Yeah, I actually didn't see that because we just had so much going on in the last 24 hours. But by the way, did you guys hear that we launched a new website?
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, so again, I want to invest in this offense because I believe in this offense. I believe in what Liam Cohen did last year. I was a believer last year, and it was really scary to start the season because they weren't playing very well, but things really turned around and got a lot better, similarly to what we saw in Chicago. And so with Chris Rodriguez, I'll say this a million times. I think he's a better in best ball type pick where he's going to get some work in that offense. But I think that if there is a player that is going to have a ceiling at running back in the Jacksonville backfield is Bashal Tutin, because Chris Rodriguez has not been a full-blown pass catcher at the NFL level. Bashal Tutin did more as a pass catcher in college, didn't that much last year for sure, but has at least that skill set. And then a lot of people will say, well, what about LaQuinn Allen? I think I'm going to probably answer that on this week's mailbag, if I recall correctly. So I'll zip my mouth there and say Chris Rodriguez better in best ball. I probably won't be drafting him in a regular season long league, very frequently, just because I think it's more of a floor play. And in best ball, you need production. You just need a double digit round guy, 11th round player, running back who can just get you something. That's fine. Cause I think he could even end up being the goal line back for them. But with Bashal Tutin, that's where I think the upside really comes into play, where in season long, you can take that swing, especially if he's your RB3 in round 6 or something, take that swing. And if it doesn't pan out, you can make up for that with your roster. Whereas you just can't do that in best ball as easily.
Joe Babani says, never hear about anyone being worse in best ball. I don't know. We've talked about it a few times. We'll talk about it on.
I think I guess Tutin's not the best example, but I do think that Tutin, I'm going to prefer Tutin a little bit more in season long than I will in best ball, just because I think that there is a serious downside case. And if I'm trying to, and I want to be at market with him in terms of as much as I want to be at that 8 to 9% range or so with Tutin, but I don't want to be super, super overweight because I see the outcome where it goes south for him.
Scott Newman says, when are we going to get some more live stream best ball drafts? Stay tuned.
Yeah, very soon.
Stay tuned. And with that being said, let's get on to today's data.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Today's data.
All right, we got some middle round running backs, JJ.
Yeah, so I did the rewind episode that dropped yesterday, and I talked through a bunch of running backs from last year who kind of had red flags to their yards per route run profiles. I am looking at guys who are below the 0.7 mark, just to reiterate. So if you didn't get to listen to the rewind episode, essentially I found that middle round running backs historically, if they had poor previous season yards per route run numbers with a decent amount of routes run, 100 plus, it's usually indicative of them underperforming versus expectation the following year. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that yards per route run can be sort of a proxy and predictor of target share the following season. And target share is obviously going to help a player see more receptions and score more PPR points. So, I have the mentality and the mantra of, I don't really care for running backs that don't, Chris Rodriguez falls into this from like a season long perspective. I don't care that much about players who just aren't going to see super high target shares because there's such a correlation, especially in PPR, between running back receiving and output and general output. And so these are probably the biggest red flag players that you could look at right now, from a middle round ish yards per route run perspective. Javonte Williams is kind of on the fringe, but we'll throw him in there. He had a 0.4 yards per route run. Tony Pollard, 0.68. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt wasn't a pass catcher in college either, 0.49. J.K. Dobbins, 0.32, which is pretty horrific. And then Jordan Mason, who's just, I mean, that was somebody I talked about a lot last year where I'm like, I can't draft this dude. He has never proven to be a pass catcher. You can explain away some of it because he played with Jahmyr Gibbs in college, but it's just, he's not a pass catcher. He's an early down bruiser. Again, a player that you should be more willing to take in a best ball environment where you know there could be some spiked weeks, especially if he's the goal line guy. But even still, I'm still not going to be overweight on a Jordan Mason. It's just not going to happen. And then Blake Corum is the last one. He had a horrible yards per route run rate. Kyron Williams wasn't that strong either last year. Some of this is obviously going to be team oriented, just in general, but Blake Corum at 0.31, I'd have to look and see if we've seen like how many hits we've seen from a yards per route run rate that low. But it does tell me, because Kyle Monangai is kind of in this group, but he's not below that 0.7 mark. It just tells me that I don't think Monangai and Corum are gonna be massive standalone hits without an injury. Do I think that they could be like high-end RB3s, low-end RB2s? Yeah. But I'm talking like, top 15, into that like no doubt weekly starter range. I think there just needs to be more to that receiving profile for both of those guys.
Yeah. Tony Pollard. Guess we'll talk about him in a second, but you're kind of breaking my heart with this.
I think we've now officially teased every player on the avoids list, right?
Let's get into it.
The late round main event.
This guy, as far as the current best ball avoids, was on the cover of the thumbnail, so you should know who it is.
Yeah, Michael Wilson, guys. I made this comparison on 2 weeks ago show on Insights and Building Projections that I think Michael Wilson has a very real chance of being this year's Jerry Jeudy, because there are a lot of parallels to this profile to what we saw with Jeudy last year. First off, the argument that Michael Wilson was so much better than Marvin Harrison Jr. last year is just lost. I mean, I just don't see that at all within the data. I mean, we know that two of the biggest metrics that we can look at from a descriptive and relatively predictive standpoint are yards per out run, targets per out run. Michael Wilson, according to PFF, yards per out run, 1.59 last year. Marvin Harrison Jr., 1.58. Michael Wilson saw a target on 20% of his routes run, not very strong. Marvin Harrison Jr., 19%, also not very strong. Not only that, Michael Wilson played a lot more without Marvin Harrison Jr. than the opposite happening, right? Because Michael Wilson wasn't missing time the way that Marvin Harrison Jr. was. And so when Marvin Harrison Jr. was off the field and not playing, that's a natural boost to what Michael Wilson can do. I thought Wilson played well. Don't get me wrong. Like when, Jacoby Brissett was under center, they made the quarterback switch. And obviously Wilson was able to compile some insane numbers in that offense. But in 3 games where Marvin Harrison Jr. had an 80% route share or higher, and technically I think this is a 60%, but an 80% route share or higher, and Jacoby Brissett was starting. There was only 3 games where that happened. Michael Wilson scored 9.1, 7.4, and 7 PPR points. He was completely worthless for your fantasy lineup in those 3 games. And like I said, the narrative right now is, what if Michael Wilson is just better than Marvin Harrison Jr.? Fine, fair. Let's think of range of outcomes here. I think that's a reasonable thing to bring up. But what if he, like, why are we making that assumption if he wasn't significantly better than Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2025? Like, we don't have that much evidence to suggest that Michael Wilson is a better wide receiver than Marvin Harrison Jr. You could say that there's a new coaching staff and maybe they'll like Michael Wilson more, but I don't know. I'd much rather side on the top 5 pick who was a prolific collegiate wide receiver and yes, has underperformed versus expectation to start his NFL career, but he hasn't been like horrifically bad to start his NFL career in Marvin Harrison Jr. And now you get a new coaching staff. What if they just see that talent and say, they weren't deploying him properly. Let's deploy him properly and let's lean into that talent from a Marvin Harrison Jr.'s from his perspective. You also have quarterback up in the air. Talked about that with Jacoby Brissett earlier. And Arizona, this is where the Jerry Jeudy comp comes into play. Like Jerry Jeudy 2 years ago ran the most routes in the league of anyone, right? Michael Wilson was top 4 last year. Why? Because Arizona had the most pass attempts, just like Cleveland did the year before that. And so there is no guarantee. Now, Cleveland still ended up, like Jerry Jeudy still ended up running a decent amount of routes, but you run into the risk of natural regression with this Arizona passing attack. Even if their defense is going to be just as bad, I don't think we can assume they're going to lead the league in pass attempts again. So you bring that all together. If his peripheral, like I said with Parker Washington, if Michael Wilson's peripherals were like good last year, right? Like if his yards per route run was fantastic, if he was seeing targets at a really high rate, and it's like, oh, he just needed a little bit more opportunity to get this done. But then every time Marvin Harrison Jr. was active and playing a lot, Michael Wilson wasn't doing anything. The opposite was happening with Parker. Parker Washington was competing with Brenton Strange at tight end, Brian Thomas, and Jacoby Myers, and he was still getting it done. That tells you that he's beating them out from a talent perspective. Michael Wilson was not doing that last year. And so I just can't buy in right now at his ADP. It has split a little bit more from Marvin Harrison Jr. and some drafts he'll go relatively late, but like, I don't know. I think I'm like 10 or 11 wide receiver spots lower than the market with Michael Wilson right now.
Yeah, same. And, say I'm ready to get burned by, MHJ again this year. So
were you on him last? Cause I wasn't on him last. You were
no,
on him?
I mean, I was on him 2 years ago.
I was on him a little bit 2 years ago. Well, more in season long. Yeah. Which was stupid in hindsight, but
right. Yeah. He was pretty expensive 2 years ago.
Last year, I fortunately was not on that train though.
Okay. Let's talk about this guy, Bucky Irving.
Yeah. Look, let's just look at this from a football perspective. Okay. Competition. You get Kenneth Gainwell, who, if he falls in the middle rounds, he'll be on the good side. Him and Jaylen Warren both. Now, again, this is partially, team and personnel driven, or, coaching driven and scheme driven. But him and Jaylen Warren have proven to be really good pass catchers in the NFL. Like they've consistently had pretty high yards per route run rates. So Kenneth Gainwell, if he moves up into that like middle round area, he becomes even more intriguing in my opinion. I think he is intriguing, period. Like you should be drafting Kenneth Gainwell. He was a great receiver last year. We know that he can be that outlet for Tampa Bay as well. And then Sean Tucker can play the goal line. I mean, the final 4 weeks of last year, the Buccaneers really stopped using Bucky Irving in like this pure bell cow type role. He never scored more than 10.8 PPR points in a game down the stretch because he was more of the in between the 20s guy where Rachaad White was getting some of that receiving work. And then Sean Tucker was seeing a lot of the goal line work. And then you look at their advanced numbers. Success rate last year, Rachaad White had a really good success rate. It was 50%. Sean Tucker's was better. It was 4 percentage points better than Bucky Irving's. And then you look at rushing yards over expected per attempt. Rachaad White was at minus 0.2. So, that tells you that he was probably just seeing easier fronts in general, given the role that he was playing, which is why his success rate was higher. Sean Tucker was plus 0.2. He was the best on the team in rushing yards over expected per attempt. Bucky Irving was minus 0.7, which was dead last among 48 qualified running backs last year in rushing yards over expected per attempt. So now we'll layer on the injury. Now we'll layer on all that other stuff. It's a really frightening profile at this moment.
Especially where he's going. I mean, he's going third round, that's a high cost for all these question marks, all this competition. Definitely agree there.
We, by the way, we got a good point in chat from Puds who says that there's no way that Arizona is going to repeat that after drafting Jeremiah Love. So I should have mentioned the Jeremiah Love pick as like signal that it's going to be probably even more difficult for Arizona to see as much passing work as they did last year.
Okay. Now on to Tony Pollard.
Yeah, look, I faded Pollard last year for the most part. I'm going to fade him probably again. It's just not a profile that I want to invest in. There's a lot up in the air in Tennessee right now. We don't know which direction it's going to go for Cam Ward. Of course, it can go favorably, but I would feel better about that if there weren't two other running backs that could get work in that backfield, here in 2026 in Tajay Spears, who has played a pass catching role last year. Tony Pollard in games with Tajay Spears had a 37% route share. Without Tajay Spears, it was 67%. So that's a massive jump in difference. Now, obviously different coaching staff, they might treat this all differently. But he only had 2 games last year with 15 or more PPR points. They draft Nick Singleton. There's question marks with the offense. You have the previous season yards per route run stuff that I just talked about. Tony Pollard just doesn't do it for me. I want more upside than a player like Pollard.
Yeah. We'll agree to disagree on Pollard. I mean, if you think the Titans offense is going to be
I'm saying that there's a downside case with the Tennessee offense. I'm drafting Cam Ward in best ball. Like I've drafted in Carnell Tate, but the issue in Wandale, but the issue is it can go south. But if it doesn't go south, okay, if it doesn't go south and it's a good offense, that doesn't even guarantee that Tony Pollard's going to be a great fantasy asset because there is other factors going on, and him himself, I just don't think is the same running back that he was 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. That's why you draft Nick Singleton. Something happens to Pollard and Spears, Singleton.
I've been drafting Singleton.
Just bring it back. Yeah.
He's pretty cheap too. He's like a 17.
Poor Tajay. He's just getting lost in the shuffle, man.
I have not drafted Tajay at all.
No, I don't think I have either. And as a Titans fan, that tells you all you need to know.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
All right, DJ Moore.
Yeah, I realize I've slowly backed off of DJ Moore. I think I drafted him I was drafting him an okay amount in like April and stuff, and the pre, the pre-draft stuff, but haven't really drafted him a ton after that. And I've realized that I'm trying not to let the narrative of the team change really overshadow what DJ Moore has been, right? 1.22 yards per route run last year, 1.44 the year prior. Those are borderline horrific numbers for a veteran wide receiver. They're not good at all. He was really weak in first downs per route run, which is very predictive for his range of the season long draft, like for his ADP. And look, the bottom line, I talked about this with Colson Loveland. There are so many good wide receivers that go in the range that DJ Moore goes in. Like I would rather have Jalen Waddle. I'd rather have Luther Burden. I'd rather have, T-Mac who goes earlier short, Mecca Buka. Like there's players that I would just rather have than DJ Moore. And that's probably what's driving this recommendation most is that fact and that factor. Cause there is a pretty big drop off once you get to like Christian Watson range or so. Like there's a gap where you don't know which wide receiver you really want to, or Terry McLaurin, I would take over DJ Moore. There's another one. A lot of people made the Stephon Diggs comp for DJ Moore going to Buffalo. Here's the pushback there. Stephon Diggs, when he went to Buffalo, his previous season, his last season in Minnesota, 2.69 yards per route run rate, which is crazy. That's absurd. And then he had 23% a target on 23% of his routes run. Stephon Diggs is also a year 6 player and DJ Moore's a year 9 player, right? So there's a lot of that going on where I'm trying to just be objective about DJ Moore. He has not been good. Like, he has not been that good of a wide receiver. He's had his moments, of course, but, and I do think that part of the reason why Chicago got rid of him is because he just wasn't a good fit with what Ben Johnson wants to do, because Ben Johnson wants precision, and DJ Moore is not that kind of player. That's just not, and hypothetically that works a lot better with a Josh Allen type who's just running wild all the time and trying to make plays happen out of the pocket. So I do think that this could burn me, this recommendation and this suggestion. But at the same time, I think it is pretty logical to say that DJ Moore just might not have it at this point to the degree in which the other wide receivers in his range do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also have, it's hard to, like, in best ball, it's hard to stack DJ Moore with Josh Allen. You're investing a lot of capital in a.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is that I don't need to get Josh Allen in best ball, you know.
If you've got to take him at that 2-3 turn, then you most likely will have to reach on DJ Moore. So it's just like 2 reaches is tough. All right, Trey McBride.
Yeah, I just can't do it with Trey McBride. I think that he's going to regress relatively heavily. He had 19 end zone targets last year, which we've only seen 11 tight ends since 2011 get 15 or more end zone targets in the season.
How funny is that after the narrative?
I know.
About him not scoring a touchdown.
I know. And all he did was just see end zone targets over and over and over again. But we have to remember too that, like, Marvin Harrison Jr. was in. Now, his splits without Marv were not that dramatic. So I don't want to use that totally against him. But at the same time, over a larger sample, it might become something that we should be semi worried about. But there's been 11 tight ends since 2011 with 15 or more end zone targets in a season. Every single one of those saw a decline in touchdowns per game the following year. The average drop was 0.3 touchdowns per game. Whereas, so if McBride sees a 0.3 drop, he would go from 0.65 touchdowns per game to 0.35, which is like going from 11 touchdowns to 6 touchdowns. And we know that there's probably gonna be less passing volume in the offense. We know that there's, decent enough competition in Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. We don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. There are way too many question marks for me to make that click around where some really good wideouts and running backs are going. Like I said earlier, if you're going to get an elite tight end, get Bowers or Loveland, in my opinion, and don't get Trey McBride.
Okay. J.K. Dobbins next on this list.
I've just realized I've not been, like, I'm lower than the market and I just haven't been drafting him, especially after the Jonah Coleman stuff. I mentioned this a little bit on the losers, the veteran losers episode of the late round show with the Jonah Coleman pick. I think it hurts J.K. Dobbins probably a little bit more than RJ. Like, it hurts RJ Harvey more from the standpoint that he was the one that people were drafting higher, but I think it could, like, really deplete J.K. Dobbins' just general role and where the value lies for him in fantasy football. Because last year, like, he was good for his cost, right? He was a double-digit round pick, and he was getting goal line work, and he was getting a lot of the early down work. What if that goes to Jonah Coleman? So even some of it goes to Jonah Coleman, because J.K. Dobbins only had a 4% target share last year, and he was not good per route run. And RJ Harvey, say what you want about his rookie season, which I've said some negative things about it. I don't think he's that good of a running back. Like, I think he's fine and he can be explosive, but he's not consistent enough from that perspective. He had a decent receiving season, RJ Harvey did, and they used him a lot close to the end zone as a receiver. So RJ Harvey kind of has that role, which is still kind of intriguing. J.K. Dobbins, I think, could just, like, not be, maybe early in the season he'll be all right, right? But towards the end, when we care about best ball most, in the playoffs and such, I'm just really worried about what that's going to look like, especially because we know he hasn't been able to stay healthy either.
We have some comments in the chat. Someone's all in on DJ Moore. Someone's all in on McBride. So that's what makes this a good list, I think. When you have people that it's like they kind of disagree because they look.
Avoids list, you're talking about good players, right? Because you have to, because that's why they're avoids. And so I'm not saying that, like, I don't have them ranked high. I'm just saying that versus cost, I'm a little bit scared to make those clicks. But I can, of course, those two in particular, Trey McBride and DJ Moore. I think all the other ones on this list, I'm like, yeah, it's not really that hard to see, like, the downside case and stuff and, see this go south. But those two guys, like, I can see it working out for them this year. So it is a little bit scary, but I'm a fantasy analyst. I got to put myself out there a little bit.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the name also, that people stay with the name. I'm guilty of this with this next guy. You just see that name and you see him in the third round and you're used to seeing him at the 1-2 turn. It's Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think he's talented, but I also don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I think he's talented, but I think that we've used that as an excuse far too often for Garrett Wilson, right? Like, eventually production has to come before we say, like if he just continues doing what he's doing, it's fine, but it's definitely not special in the way that people think that Garrett Wilson is special. I remember making the comps to Chris Olave for a while. You guys can look at old tweets from me where I would like show the yards per route run and the target shares and stuff. And it's like, they're really not that different of players in terms of their actual production. And it did help Chris Olave last year that he gets a better offensive system and he gets a better offensive-minded coach. But I just don't feel like that's happening to the degree in which we want it to happen with Garrett Wilson. And he is going firmly in that range of really good wide receivers. I made the mistake of drafting him too much early, like just thinking like, not really thinking through all of my player takes in the moment, before the draft happened. But then the draft happens. They draft Omar Cooper and Kenyon Sadiq. He's going amongst those really good wideouts like T-Mac and Ibuka and Luther Burden and Zay Flowers. And I would take all of them over Garrett Wilson, like pretty easily. He's had multiple 30% target share seasons, but he's never scored 15 or more PPR points per game. Garrett Wilson in a single season. He's never given you that like high end wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1 type season. And now you have Geno Smith, who I think, I've said it before. I think the Jets offense can be better than what people think because people think that they're going to be horrible. I think there's an out here where they're better, but there's also a very realistic possibility that they're just as bad. And we have to recognize that as well. If Garrett Wilson were going around later, it'd be fine. Like, I think that's where he should go. But at the 3-4 turn, early 4th round, I'd rather get him in the late 5th, where like right before a Christian Watson or something, or around that range, as opposed to, snagging him where there's just a lot of upside. There's a lot of good wide receivers. It's going to be, again, in auction drafts, it's the same thing as last year where we had like the J-Mo, George Pickens, like that kind of range of wide receivers last year, where in auction drafts, you could get like 3 or 4 of those guys at a discount. We're going to run into the exact same thing this year, where that group I keep mentioning is going to be cheaper than even like, the early 3rd round guys, like that you can go after. But the ceiling outcomes really aren't that different between those guys. And so I just don't think Garrett Wilson belongs, despite the fact that I do think he's talented. I just don't think that he belongs in that tier.
Fair enough. And like I said, it's a name recognition thing. It's, you see Garrett Wilson, you see him available and you're like, oh, I want that. And you don't realize that maybe the conditions for him this year aren't that great comparable to who's going around him. I will say though, it's easy to stack him with Geno Smith because Geno Smith goes way late. Yeah. And it's, I think it's the end of the 3rd round or beginning of the 4th round. You can easily get him and Breece Hall.
You can. I've done that before. I've done that. Yeah. I've done that in drafts. I don't think I've done it in any like millie drafts, but more of the lower ones. But yeah, I mean, like you can, the other thing too, though, is that like Geno Smith is not a lock to play every game.
Yeah.
So like, that's another problem with him and stacking him.
Okay. Good stuff, JJ. That does it for the avoids list. Now let's wrap this up. Okay. Just a reminder to go and subscribe, like, comment. We love the comments. We love the interaction that we get. Even if you disagree, tell us why you disagree. And let us know in the comments, or just tell us that, we're your favorite show and you love us so much. And that would be great too. Either or we'll take. With that being said, make sure you go to lateround.com because now we have the new membership. We've got the new draft guide for pre-order. If you want to do that, we have a prospect guide. We have the newsletter. The newsletter, we have now a section for newsletters. So there's been like a couple of like big newsletters that we've done, deep dives, that sort of thing. We haven't had a place for that in the past. Now we do. We have a newsletter section. So if you missed out on I think we've got 5 or 6 of our best ones up there. You can go and do some reading there for free. So, yes. JJ, final thoughts?
No, I mean, again, I appreciate everybody for the support. You guys are what has made the new lateround.com possible. And I hope that you dig it and enjoy, the interaction and the new stuff that we're adding, to the website and to the membership, that all for the same price, by the way. Like we're not shifting prices. We're literally just adding more. So, again, we'll be communicating with you guys. If you're on Patreon now, we'll be sending some emails out so that you guys can transfer over and do it seamlessly. And we are here to help. If you have any questions, email david@lateround.com.
And I'm ready. I'll, have my caffeine ready and a couple more days.
Hopefully a ton of questions.
Yeah. But I mean, we still have some stuff to do to, migrate everybody over. And this is something that we knew we would have to do, and we welcome it. We welcome that challenge because we want everyone to get on the new membership platform, and that way we can just do more stuff on the site. So, JJ, appreciate everyone else that tuned in and that gave us so much encouragement during the show. If you disagree with any of JJ's takes, that's fine. We forgive you. And with that being said, JJ, let's get out of here. Appreciate you all. Love you all. We'll see you next time here on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Peace.
You know how it's never really about where you're going, it's about who you're going with? The right people can turn any drive into a great memory. That's something Toyota really believes. They design vehicles around real life and real people, the ones who make plans happen and bring everyone together. Inside, everything's built with passengers in mind. Comfortable seating, smart layouts, and space that actually works so everyone can relax and enjoy the ride. There's room for the people, room for the stuff, and room for the moments that happen along the way. Because when people are the destination, your ride is important. Learn more at Toyota.com and find the vehicle that fits your people.
This is Sophia Donner from OK Storytime. This summer, find your next obsession on Prime Video. And listen, we're not saying you need another obsession, but there could be a lot worse ones. Steamy romance, addictive love stories, and the book-to-screen favorites you've already read twice, so why not watch them a third time? Off Campus, Elle, The Love Hypothesis, and more. Slow burns, second chances, chemistry you can feel through the screen, and it makes you wish you were actually in that movie. We've got binge-worthy series, can't-miss movies, perfect for when you're ignoring your own problems or procrastinating, as one does. Your next obsession is waiting. Watch only on Prime.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.